If I'm holding this here and I power this on, you can see that that reacts. And then as I move, I have full motion control. All right, people, I'm Garrett. This is Making Movies, and today we're gonna talk in depth about how to get the most out of your Zhiyun weebill S. If you remember over the summer, we had talked about the weebill S. We got kind of an initial first look at this gimbal, and it still, to this day, is my favorite small mirrorless compact gimbal. What Zhiyun wanted to do with this gimbal was to make it modular, so you could add and expand onto the ecosystem of the weebill S, but didn't have to commit to it all out the gate, which is good because not every filmmaker needs all of the bells and whistles of some of these tools. And when you force every filmmaker to buy into a full ecosystem all at once, it either is going to price out people who otherwise would want the product, or you're gonna get a whole bunch of features that you don't necessarily need. And I like that Zhiyun's kind of attacking it both ways by making all of these modules affordable, comparatively affordable. This is the weebill S. Quick reminder, it's a super tiny gimbal that has a couple of features that I think are really, really incredible. But for small cameras, whether it's DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, I don't know of a gimbal that's better. It has batteries that can be replaced, which means that you're not stuck with an internal battery unit. Has a focus wheel built in. All of the controls here on the mast. It has a quick release plate for your camera to get it on and off, which is incredible because then you don't have to rebalance your camera every time you take it on or off. In that video, we briefly talked about two of the modules that you could get or add-ons for this. The first being the image transmission system, which is this guy. So on the one side, you have a micro USB that allows you to take power off of the gimbal to power this. It does have internal battery, but having it plugged in is just a great way to ensure that it's all powered all at once and you don't have to worry about this battery dying on you, though it does last a fair amount of time. And then there's HDMI and USB 3. These help you monitor what's on the camera wirelessly as well as have wireless camera control. So then you can take your phone here with your phone clip here mounted on here and wirelessly be able to transmit the image and camera controls from this to the phone or to the mast of the gimbal and have full camera control. It's fantastic. And when you get the image transmission system module, it comes with a mounting plate that mounts directly onto the bottom of this here, which is great because I can then just slide this guy in like that, and it's ready to go. The ports are on the same side as the ports on the camera, so you don't need to be dragging cables all over the place. And then the power cable on this side works with the power module here on this arm. So all of the cables are on the appropriate sides for where it would be on your camera. Something to note here, this does have a full-size USB 3.1 port. That said, that's not what you want to use to connect to this camera. You want to use a standard micro USB. It does seem a little counterintuitive, but this does connect into one half of this USB port here, just like that. This half is then what connects into your camera, like so. So if you're having communication issues and the camera isn't talking to this, chances are you're probably using the full port. Use a micro USB here, plug it into your camera with the appropriate cable, and then you're gonna have that proper communication. We will then hook in our HDMI mini on this side, and then this little camera I'm playing with is a mini out there like so. On this side, we have the micro USB, which we are going to want to plug into the back arm here, which is also a micro USB. So I have a provided micro USB to micro USB cable. One side is right angle, one side is straight, but they are both extra long. I want the right angle cable for the gimbal, like that. And then I want to kind of, again, this is just what I do, but kind of wrap this cable around at least once like this, and then plug it in here. So that way, again, we don't have like long, floaty, dangly cables as best we can. Now, the gimbal is going to power my transmitter, so I don't have to rely on battery, and I have HDMI, so I have video out, as well as having USB control, so I have camera control. Again, both here on the gimbal as well as onto a phone should I want to mount that in here and get that kind of wireless transmission. The other module that we talked about in the last video was this, which is the transmount motors. There's two that you can purchase. There's the Max, which is for both focus control and or zoom control, and then the Lite, which is just for focus control. I generally, when using just one, will use the Max. It gives me more torque, so depending on the lens that I'm using and the tension in that lens, I know that this motor is going to work. So we'll connect this motor real fast. Let's take the lens mount off. Makes this a little bit easier. Screw this guy into place like that. Lens support back on. The motor here. The other thing is that you're gonna wanna have one of these little zip tie things, which is like this. To get this motor to communicate with the gimbal as well as to power it, we are going to use one of the provided cables, which is a USB Type-C cable to USB Type-C. And on the side of my motor, I have a USB Type-C port. And then on the front of my arm here, I have USB Type-C. So I will just connect those two. And again, I'm gonna wrap it just once, just because I like to have kind of tighter cable management. Like so. When it comes to placing the transmount motor against the gears on the lens, you don't want it to be too tight. You basically want to take it and you want to rest it so it fits nicely in the teeth and then tighten it in. If you over tighten it, it's going to create more torque than it needs. So this is fine where it can rotate freely. With any gimbal, balancing is the most important part. The better we can balance our gimbal, the more effectively that gimbal will function. If we don't take the time to balance our gimbal, our motors are going to be constantly trying to help keep us balanced as opposed to keeping us stable. That's one of the things that makes this gimbal great, is because each of the axes lock. So I can unlock one of the axes, I can balance it to make sure that it sits and does everything perfectly the way that I want it to, like this. I could go and lock that axis and then work on balancing the next one. Once I'm all balanced, I can then go on to the next step, which is going to be pairing my transmitter with my phone. For this, you're going to need the ZY Play app. It's in the App Store as well as in the Google Play Store. So if you are Android or iOS, doesn't matter, it works for both. If you have been using the weebill S for any period of time, you're gonna be used to connecting to the gimbal via the app like this. But because we're using the image transmission system, we don't wanna connect to the gimbal. So if we swipe over, now we'll see the image transmission system. This is what we want to connect to, which is still going to give us all of the gimbal control, the camera control, but also the image monitoring, which is really, really important because then we have that wireless. So we will turn this guy on, just holding the power button for 3 seconds. We'll turn it on. You will see a green light appear in the middle of those 3 LEDs. It will flash as it's turning on, and once it goes to solid green, it's fully booted up and ready to go. I'm also going to turn my camera on, so that way we can actually see what the heck we're doing. Perfect. And then in my app, I'm going to hit connect now. It's going to kick me off of the ZY app, go into the settings app where I want to connect to the Wi-Fi. And you will see that it will have something that says Zhiyun Tech with a series of letters after that. That is the wireless transmitter. That's what we connect with. So when I tap connect, it's going to ask for a password. The default password that comes on this is 1234567 It's just 1 through 8. Now you can go in and change that to make it something of your own, but by default, 1 through 8, so it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the password that will connect. Once we're connected to the Wi-Fi, we'll go back to our ZY Play app, and instead of saying connect, it now says enter. So if I hit enter, it's going to take me to a screen that should look somewhat familiar, and I can push this little button here, which is my live preview button, and now we can see what the camera is seeing. It's a very fascinating frame. With this, I now have camera control, gimbal control, and image transmission off of one device wirelessly to my smartphone, which is absolutely incredible and gives this gimbal way more functionality than if I was just using the gimbal control in my ZY Play. With the image transmission system, this module and all of the other modules we're about to talk about, it's really important to make sure that the firmware is always up to date. And when we first connect the transmission system to our phone via Wi-Fi, it's going to let us know if we have an update that needs to be made. It'll show up here in red at the top. We click update now. You can choose whether to disconnect from the device, connect to your Wi-Fi, download it onto your phone, reconnect to this, and then update the firmware that way. What I generally do is I will stay connected to the Wi-Fi in here and then use my data, my 4G LTE, to download the update and put it into there. Either way, it's super simple. It's literally 2 clicks and it's done. When updating the transmitter, it's important to know a couple of things. The first is your battery in here should be charged at least 50%. I always keep it plugged in, so that's never really an issue for me. But it also should be connected to the gimbal. So the gimbal should be on, it should be free, it should be weighted and balanced appropriately, and then you go through and update because it's going to communicate with the gimbal while it's updating. It's an important step. I missed it the first time and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't updating, but just make sure that it's connected, that you've balanced it, the gimbal is on, and then you can go through and just hit update. It will do the whole thing. It's fantastic. Super, super simple. Zhiyun didn't stop here. They have added a couple of modules to make this a much more robust system. The first of those is the receiver module. The receiver module looks just like the transmitter module, except it has HDMI mini on one side, no USB here, and then of course the micro USB on the other side for power. This also has an internal battery, which give you a couple of hours of juice, but having this micro USB can help us charge that should we want to power it off of something else, which is fantastic. This now gives us a wireless transmission system and receiver where instead of having to be on my phone, I can use a monitor, a real actual monitor, and a monitor of any size. We need to make sure that the firmware in this is updated and that it is in fact paired to our device. And to do that, it's actually pretty simple. So we will take our device. Let me power this down real quick. To pair the receiver with the transmitter is quite simple. And the best part is you only have to do it once. Once they are paired, they are automatically gonna pair every time you turn them on. The only time they won't is that if we change the password in the transmitter, we're gonna then need to reconnect them. But to pair them for the first time, you're going to take a USB micro to USB micro cable, the one that was on the gimbal earlier. We take one end, plug it into our transmitter like so. We take the other end, plug it into our receiver, thusly, very cool word, like this. All we then have to do is to turn both of them on by holding their respective power buttons for 3 seconds. They will power up. We'll see that by the green indicator lights. Now, to get the receiver to pair with the transmitter, we then rapidly push the power button 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it is going to copy all of the data from this onto this, so then it auto pairs every time. Once we have the receiver paired with the transmitter, we then need to update the firmware in our receiver, again, to make sure that we are working with the same system. To do that, we go to our ZY Play app and we connect to the transmitter. Because the receiver is connected to the transmitter, it is going to relay that information directly here. And if there is an update that needs to happen, it's going to give me that same update indicator. I simply tap that, go through, update it, it updates, it will automatically power itself off. Don't touch it until it does that. Once it's powered off, you can power it back up and be totally fine. And now they are connected and they don't need to be attached with a cable anymore. They're always going to talk, which is fantastic. The receiver comes with the same type of mounting plate that the transmitter does, which looks like this. It's a little sled that allows us to attach it like so, but it has a little 1/4 thread. This is what we would attach to our monitor, and we could then connect this to the monitor, which gives us another viewing monitor for what's going on with the gimbal. Now, I have a couple of monitors that I've been using for a while. The first is the Small HD focus monitor. Small HD makes all of my favorite monitors of every size, whether it's for production or post-production, what have you, and this is no exception. It's a fantastic monitor. My only complaint with using it with this monitor is that the battery mounts vertically here, like this. Which means that if I then take this connection plate and I put it on my Small HD here on top like so, it blocks my ability to take this battery on and off. If I wanted to, or if this is the only monitor that you have, I would take this and connect it to the side like so, and then you can have the monitor across the side. If you have a Shinobi, you're not gonna have a problem with it. It is gonna connect just fine. The other monitor that I have that I like is the FeelWorld F6 Plus. It's a little bigger than the small HD, but the batteries connect via the side like this. So you're not gonna have any problem getting the batteries on and off because they kind of go on the back and connect in here. If you want to see more about this monitor, there's a link up there. We did a whole review on this. The issue with the FeelWorld monitor is that the threads, the 1/4-20 threads, which are on 3 sides, top, bottom, and side, are inset a little deeper than the thread on this guy. So the thread on this dude is really, really shallow, really, really low profile, which is great, but I actually can't connect it because there's just not enough play here between the two, right? I can just kind of set it up and take it down like that. To fix that, I've kind of gone through and done my own little build on it. It's a little higher profile than I want, but something that's super, super simple. I have a double male 1/4-20. This would be a way that I can connect it directly to my monitor like this. But of course, because it's male, it's not gonna connect to this guy. So to fix that, I then took one of these 1/4-20 washers. This is a thick mount washer, and I connect this to that, like this. I then connect this guy to this guy, like that. And then I connect this to the top of this monitor like so. And I have this little plastic washer in here so that when I tighten it down, I can tighten it exactly to the position that I want. We will tighten this down with our trusty Leatherman. By the way, Leatherman, something you absolutely should have. These multi-tools are fantastic. They have every possible tool that you could need on a film set. Awesome, definitely have one of these. But use that, connect this in here like that. I have my plate. I then take my receiver and I can slide it directly in like this. Again, if you have a different kind of monitor than the FeelWorld, you're not gonna have this kind of clearance. It'll be a much more low profile, which I would like, but because the FeelWorld is so inset, I had to kind of do this situation to make that work. You wouldn't have that with the small HD either, but the battery thing just makes it so that way I didn't really want to use this. Now, I have wireless video to this monitor. We'll connect a cable to this real fast. All right, we've got everything hooked up now, so then we're gonna power it on. So I'm gonna power my gimbal on, perfect. I'm gonna power the camera on, perfect. I'm gonna power my transmitter on, wonderful. So that's all on. And then I can power my monitor on and my receiver on, again, just by holding those buttons down. So you see the Zhiyun logo come on there, and then it's automatically going to pair to my transmitter and start showing me exactly what my camera is seeing. Bingo. Okay, so I've got this kind of looking at the corner of my desk here, and you can see that I have wireless image transmission from this to this. And the best part is I don't actually have to have this connected to the gimbal at all. This is just a standalone wireless image transmission system. So I could just put this onto the camera and put it on a tripod and have it across the room and then still be able to use this as a wireless system, which is awesome. One of the things that I really like that Zhiyun makes, which actually isn't one of the modules for this, but just something I really like, are these. These little pucks that they make are quick release pucks that have 1/4-20 on either side, so top and bottom. And then there's this little quick pull release here to connect these. And this is something that I use a lot, especially like if I'm gonna put this on a stand, I'll just connect this guy here, connect that little puck there. And now I can monitor mount just like that, which is great because I now have a stand for it, so my monitor always has a home, but if I wanted to pick it up and take it on the go, I just take it like that and I can do whatever I want with it. So super, super helpful. Not one of the modules necessarily that we're talking about, but a thing that I really, really, really love about this. This is a really, really cool system, but it's not as cool as it's about to be. This is the camera control remote. And this remote, when put in conjunction with the receiver module, getting all of the image transmission system, I now have camera control as well as gimbal control and motion control straight from this system, which is absolutely mind-blowing. The reason why something like that would be necessary or important is because it's really hard to pull focus, to make your movements, right? Because you're gonna be moving around heavily when doing something like this, and then also make sure that you have the proper framing and that you get the right pans and tilts and movements, and all of that stuff becomes exceedingly difficult when you start getting into really, really complex shots as a one-man band. So having a second operator available to be able to do the camera control, the focus control, the positioning control, and then you can just focus on movement, gives you way more flexibility and freedom to do much more complex shots. So with the remote system, it comes with a couple of things. We have a cable and we also have this mounting plate. The mounting plate is so we can attach this to the monitor, have one kind of all-inclusive system, and then the cable is to connect the two so we get everything talking. Let me set that up real fast. This guy quick slides right here into the edge like so. There's this little quick release plate here. Now it's not going anywhere. This little guy slides on this rail system back and forth like this, so I can take any sized monitor that I want and connect it to this system. We're gonna use the field world because I already have it set up, so hold on here, let me grab it. Take that guy off. Slide this guy forward. I'm gonna connect this, tighten that down. I put my little Zhiyun puck here at the bottom, and then I can connect that just like so. Now, the only other cable I have is this USB micro cable. I will put this in here and plug it into the back of my transmitter like so. There. And now it's fully connected. Now that we have this all kind of connected, you can kind of see how cool and compact this whole thing looks. We want to power this on. To do that, we look at the side of the remote and you'll see that there is a power button and there's also a power toggle that says on and off. Leave this off. We're gonna get to what that does in a second, but what we wanna do is we wanna push and hold the power button for at least 3 seconds and we will see the screen come to life here and power it on. Before you'll get full functionality out of your remote, much like the transmitter and the receiver, you're going to wanna make sure that you have your firmware updated. To update your firmware, you're going to take the charging cable, which is your micro USB to standard USB, plug it into your computer, Mac or PC, doesn't matter, then plug it into your remote. Go to Zhiyun's website, which is zhiyun-tech.com, download their calibration software as well as the relevant firmware for the device that we're updating. In this case, it would be the remote. Once downloaded, we want to power on the device by holding the power button down for 3 seconds and pushing down, scrolling to where it says update, hit right to put it into update mode. Open the calibration software and hit browse. We'll then navigate to where we have the firmware file stored and hit open. Then in the top left, we will also hit open there, so then it will sync to our device. Navigate to the bottom and hit update. It will then do everything automatically and power off the remote when it is done. If we don't have everything updated, you might get some connectivity issues or some functionality issues. To avoid all that, make sure all of your stuff is updated. And to check what version your firmware is, with your transmitter and your receiver, you would do that in the ZY Play app. On the remote, we can go here, hit down on our toggle wheel, go down all the way to where it says about, hit right, and it will tell us what version of firmware we are running. So we can see what the current firmware is and whether or not we need to update. In this case, of course, at least at the time of this filming, I have everything updated to what it needs to be, which is great. So we'll back out of this. In your gimbal, you want to go to camera and make sure that you have your camera set to CCS, which is the camera control system. If it's set to whatever your default camera is, whether it's Sony, Canon, Panasonic, what have you, it's not going to trust this to do it. So make sure that it's set to CCS here, so then that way we know that our camera control system is what's going to be taking over this camera. And now that it's connected, right, my transmitter, my receiver, and my remote now has full control over the camera. So here I have TV, which is my shutter speed. I have AV, which is my aperture, and I have my ISO and exposure compensation. But you can see that I can adjust this live, go way too bright or way too dark or somewhere in between, and have full control over the camera to the point of having record control. So if I push this record button, starts recording there. Being able to fully control the camera from this remotely makes this way more usable for doing complex shots. But they didn't stop here. In fact, if I take this guy off, we go back to this power toggle here. What this on-off toggle is for motion control. So if I'm holding this here and I power this on, you can see that reacts. And then as I move, I have full motion control. So now, not only do I have camera control, but I can sit here and I can follow motion and get the exact shots that I want, and then if I power it off, it's then gonna freeze wherever it is. You can double tap this, it'll recenter itself like that. And then if I power it on again, we're back to the races. And I even have focus control, so I don't know if you can see this here, but I can, just like that, toggle focus. Another thing is that this transmitter doesn't just have to pick one. So it's transmitting to this receiver, but it's also transmitting to the phone. So my operator can still have a monitor here, see what they're capturing. I can have my director or my AC working off of this monitor here, and everybody can see what they need to see. Everybody can control what they need to control, and you can get extremely complex shots that would, even with a gimbal, otherwise be impossible with a single operator. I love the fact that it's modular. Not everybody needs to have a full mimic control system. Not everybody needs to have a wireless transmission director's monitor, but for those that do, you can scale this up as you need to, which is what makes this whole thing so cool. If you liked this video, do me a favor, give it a like, share it with a friend. If you want more stuff like this, hit subscribe and that bell, and as always, I will see you in the next episode.